So welcome everybody to the ETH Game Programming Laboratory final presentations for 2023. It's wonderful to see everyone here in the room. Thanks for joining us. There's some seats still on the very front if you'd like to take them. Otherwise, feel free to file in and fill the remaining ones. So big greetings. Also, hello to everyone watching the live stream, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Bob Sumner. It's a real pleasure to be able to host this event today. And it's an honor for me to have taught this course over the past 14 weeks, where students have worked in small teams of 5 or 6 people to create a novel video game basically from scratch. They started the course on the first day with a completely blank slate, and everything you see today is the product of their work in the course. Just a quick highlight, this is a course at ETH Zurich. It's part of the computer science department. It's a capstone course, so the concept is that students take the course toward the end of their studies, and it's a way to reinforce the computer science concepts that they've learned throughout the undergraduate and graduate program here at ETH in this very fun, exciting task of programming a video game. The overall structure has these 3 main phases: design, development, and refinement. That's kind of the gross process that the students followed throughout the semester, and we're seeing kind of the final product of their work today. So we're, in a moment, going to take a look at all of the student projects. You should pay close attention because you'll have a chance to vote for your favorite game, since we're awarding an audience award today. We're also going to be joined by a colleague named Nick Grover from Studio Gobo, a AAA game studio located in Brighton, England, who organized a playtest of professional game designers, game programmers, game developers, who tested all the games and will talk about their results and also announce a jury award winner. Now, we have a large class, and to kind of give some friendly competition and also some camaraderie between the students, we divided the students, we sorted them into 3 different houses: the House of Meridian, the House of Winterhold, and the House of Rapture. So I want to hear a big cheer for House of Meridian. Woo! Woo! House of Winterhold. Woo! And the House of Rapture. Nice. So they will all be on stage momentarily. Every year, the course has a theme. And this year, we had a pantheotic theme, a very cool one. The theme was the gods. Okay? And to kind of differentiate a bit between the 3 different houses, we divided this into 3 sub-themes: the Greek gods, Norse gods, and Egyptian gods. And each house was assigned one of these themes. And what that means is that the kind of design decisions they make for their game need to somehow respond to this theme. They need to be able to justify the choices they make against this theme. And I think you'll see that reflected in the games we present. So we have 13 teams, 13 amazing games. We're going to jump right in and get started, starting with the House of Meridian. I'm going to ask the first team, Meridian Team 1, to come on stage for their game Kronos' Curse. While they're coming up, we're going to play the trailer for their game. Oh, excuse me. And here it is.
So, welcome to our presentation. Our game is called Chronos Curse, which is a single-player 2D platform game, puzzle-based. The setting is the ancient Greece, where two heroes, Pirithous and Theseus, are going through a quest to save a princess. The platform and the puzzles are based on a time mechanics, a time reversal mechanics, which I will explain you with a video in the next slides. So, here is the settings. We have two players, and the game is played in two stages. The first player is the one on the top, and first you try to collect a hourglass with the first player, and meanwhile you're trying to collect this hourglass, you try to set up a way for the second player to reach a scroll, which in this case is hidden in the shadow. So, here is the video. The first player pushes a box below, and then he goes up and he collects the hourglass. And then he collects also a coin, which is an optional object. The second player then tries to go up on the box and, through the time reversal mechanics, collect the scroll. I also have another example. So in this level, the player can also interact with some lever which makes something happen. So in this case, the first player moves and then push down a block, collects a coin, and then tries with the other lever to push a box below inside the hole so that the second player will be able to go to the top. As you can see, this other player tried to collect another coin, the second coin, and now he tries to collect the scroll to end up the level.
Perfect, thank you. So now a little bit more about our journey. We first started with our game design. We talked a lot, we had a lot of discussion, brainstorming, and we wanted to come up with a unique game idea, game mechanics, and we found this time reversal. Then we went on testing. We have our physical prototype on the right, and this is on a later stage where you can see when we tested the levels. Then we also collected some feedbacks. Here you can see the feedback collection during one of our classes. Now we will show you how we made progress. First, this is very simple. You can see some Minecraft blocks, Mario and Luigi. But then we tried to improve the graphics. We started to design our own graphics, our own characters. You can see here we had our two main characters. We had our background. We had our tile set. And the final product looks like this. This is the third world. You can see there are more details. There are torches, lights, and so on. Then, obviously, during our game development, there were bugs that we hopefully cannot find anymore.
All right, so finally I'm going to talk about or give you a quick insight into the game mechanics. So maybe the most important one, the time reversal. What we do is basically we store for each frame the position of the player on a stack in normal time, and then when the time reverses, we take the position from the stack and set this to the position of the player. And this is also done for every object that a player moves during a normal time. Then as for the physics, we tried to first implement a custom physics engine, but there were some troubles with that, and there were some limitations that we found. Some objects or some elements that we wanted to implement, but were very difficult with a custom engine. So what we did is we took one that was already developed in Monogame, it's Ether 2D. These are some of the things that this engine allowed us to do. So on the left you see some chains, then you see some rotating blocks, some kind of trampoline, and some seesaws in the last image. A crucial part of our game was to try to create fun challenges, fun levels, and the tool that assisted us the most in this is Tiled. So what this allows us to do is basically to draw the level, kind of draw the hitboxes of everything, and kind of set also some custom things like the lights and the time. Yeah. And we did not just use that for the level creation, we also used that for the level selection, where we put our levels into place, and then also for some parts of our story. So it was really a tool that allowed us to do all these things. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed our presentation. I'm going to leave you with some fun facts about it. And yeah, hope you enjoy playing it after in the food lab. And thanks for your attention.
Okay, big thank you to, that was Meridian Team 1. One note, if you're watching the live stream on YouTube, please feel free to comment. We're watching everything, so we're happy to respond to any questions you have about the course. And we can already move on now to Meridian Team 2, Twisted Descent. Come on up stage, let's take a look at your trailer.
So welcome to Twisted Descent. First off, our character is also Theseus. So it is based on the Greek mythology of Theseus and the Maze of the Minotaur. But contrary to the original story, Theseus lost his sword, as you've seen in the trailer. And he has to go into the maze only with his rope, which he got from his wife Ariadne. So what is our game? It is an action-packed cave exploration game with some roguelike elements, which specifically means in our case that all the maps are procedurally generated, and it also gets harder the deeper you delve into the cave system. Our main idea was that the combat would be solely based on a physically simulated rope, and where the main goal is then to survive as long as possible until you reach your inevitable death. So as first steps, we drew a lot of concept arts, and we thought about mechanics that could be fun. So mainly we're just thinking about how to kill enemies with just the rope. And then we also tried that on the physical prototype, which you can see on the right, which was actually quite a lot of fun with a rubber band. And it worked quite well, so we went on with that idea. And when we started coding, we first started with the rope, of course, because it's one of our technical achievements. And we already got a quite well-working rope after 1 week, which surprised us. But of course, there were a lot of more problems we would encounter later on. At 2 weeks, we already had like a basic character and a static map we handcrafted, but no interaction at all. After 1 month, we had basic level generation and also some interactions with columns and amphoras. Those are the gray and red circles, but yeah, there's a lot of sprites missing. And after 2 months, we had implemented most of the stuff we wanted to do, and we also hugely improved our artwork thanks to our great artist over here. But yeah, there were a lot of struggles. So the rope, as you can see on the left, tended to disintegrate if we pulled too hard on it. And we also had problems with performance when the rope got too long. But in the end, we fixed most of it, or at least could cover it up, so it's no longer noticeable to the player. And on the right, you can see the isometric projection we used for the game. It also caused us a lot of headache, because for one, the coordinate system is skewed and rotated, which makes things more complicated. And also you have to take care of occlusion, so the player can be behind or in front of the column. And also we want that the rope wraps around nicely around the columns. Let's quickly look at how to kill stuff in our game, because that's one of the most important things. So as an easy one, you can just dash into an enemy and squish it into a wall. You can also use one of the electric columns to electrocute your rope and then fry your enemies to death. If you're more sophisticated, you can try to build a slingshot and throw some Greek fire at your enemies to burn them to ashes. Of course, there are more ways to kill enemies, but I think you should try it out yourself, and maybe you can figure them out later at the food lab. There's also more stuff we did, which we didn't show in the presentation, but you might have seen it in the trailer. So there's loot chests where you can get some healings, or your run can get longer, or you can also find spears which you can place, which basically act as a column if you don't have a useful setup in front of you. And there's lots of different enemies with 2 different enemies with unique behaviors. So you have to strategize a little bit around that. And thanks to one of our playtesters, we also added a time limit to the game. So this increases when you kill enemies. This is just for incentivizing the player to actually engage the enemies and not just dash through the whole level. And yeah. And as our time is running out as well, I'm going to thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you playing our game.
Thanks a lot. Let's move on. Meridian Team 3, Prometheus the Heist. Come on stage.
Crime just got hot. In Olympus, the doors only speak one language. The language of action. And teamwork. Enter the realm of gods and steal the fire by sneaking and hiding and opening doors. And also sometimes just running really fast and the guards get confused. Get ready for the greatest heist of all time. This summer, Olympus won't burn. Prometheus, the heist.
Cool. Hi, guys. We are House Meridian, Team 3, and we are so thrilled to tell you about our game, Prometheus, the heist. As I've already said, we're from House Meridian, and we got assigned the Greek gods. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the myth of Prometheus, but we thought it would be a fun idea to make a cooperative multiplayer game based on the Titan who snuck into Olympus and stole the fire from the gods. That is based on stealth, strategy, and teamwork. So let me introduce you to these guys, Pro, me, the, and us, our intrepid heroes who dare to sneak into Olympus and steal the fire. For a game, we actually got inspired by fun, colorful games such as Animal Crossing. We really wanted to play up the fun party co-op game aspect rather than the sneaky dark route. And so we went for more of a cute, round, friendly character art style with pixel art and top-down view, which we thought would be easier to make look good. For our physical prototype, we got to play around with a bunch of paper. Yeah, you were there when we did that. Which brings me to, let me take you on a brief journey through the stages of development. So this is from when we didn't really have any art or a working game. And then we added some art, which looked too cluttered. So we dialed back, and we also switched to a top-down bird's eye view perspective of the walls for a little bit. And then we added a outdoor tile set and the fire. So we have a little bit of a visual variety to the game. And then we did new walls again because the top-down bird's eye wasn't working very, very well. Some challenges that we encountered along the way. So it turns out it's actually quite difficult to design rooms that aren't too challenging, but that aren't too simple, that look good, that encourage cooperation, etc. And we had to make a bunch of those. So yeah, another thing, because this is a heist game and it's about sneaking and not getting detected, we needed to have somewhat intelligent guard behavior, and so we had to do pathfinding for the guards. Also, you already saw the perspective issue, which we went through a couple iterations of. So let's talk about the final game. So if you've seen Ocean's 11, the most crucial part of any, well, one of the most crucial parts of any heist is assembling the crew. So we came up with these 4 characters. They all have different strengths, different skill sets, and allows up to 4 players, so it's a multiplayer game. And we also have to come up with room designs, because the core mechanic of the game is you have to walk through the rooms without getting detected by the guards, and open doors by collecting keys or standing on pressure plates. So we did indoors, outdoors, color variations, yeah. So let's talk about the guards, because we really wouldn't have a game without them. So we have 2 types of guards. We have stationary guards and we have moving guards. And if they see you or hear you, and this is where the stats come in, because there's a different range for every character, they start chasing you. And then if they lose sight of you, they don't hear you, they walk back to their idle spot. But if they catch you, you lose one of your lives, of which you have 2. And if you lose both of them, something fun happens where the camera pans to the person who lost so that the other players can bully them for being bad at the game. Let's talk about another thing that we wouldn't really have a game without, the fire. So once the players actually get to the fire, the hot potato game starts. This is a fun mechanic that we thought would add variety to the game. So to introduce more cooperation, you have to actually pass the torch between the players, or if you hold it for too long, you burn yourself. This is, again, something that we introduced for cooperation. It also makes the game a little bit more hectic, because you also have to not get detected by the guards still. And yeah. Speaking of things that are fire, we have a soundtrack, and once you get to the fire, we initially have a very jazzy main theme with a lot of percussions and swing rhythm, and it's fun, and Ocean's 11, and once you get to the fire, we lose the percussion and we lose the swing rhythm, and you get the tempo up to 200, and it's very hectic and very stressful, just as we intended for it to be. And I believe once you get to the first room, you win the game. Forgot to mention that. Yeah, but I believe that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for listening to us. And we would really appreciate your votes, actually. Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic, thanks so much. We can move on to the next team. This is Meridian Team 4. Join me on stage. Let's take a look at your trailer for Ion's Curse.
Hello everyone, let's talk about Ion's Curse. So for the genre of this game, we chose exploration, which is quite unique and also very challenging. And because we wanted to make a good game, the first question we asked was, what makes a great exploration game? And there are a lot of keywords that you might have heard if you've already heard about video game and game design, for example, level design, freedom, immersion. But how do we actually do that in practice? Well, there is one thing that we wanted to avoid. Well, actually two. I'll call that the exploration killers. One, the quest book, which tells you what to do. And the second one, the minimap, which tells you where to go. And I mean, it's really a shame that most of the games today still have that in their game. Fortunately, there is this game called Outer Wilds, which also happens to be my favorite game of all times. And along with other inspiration, like A Short Hike and Firewatch, we distilled a very nice gameplay loop for a game. You see here, exploration is right at the center. That's what we want. We want the player to explore. With exploration, the player gains knowledge. With this knowledge, he can unlock new areas. But still, with this loop, we have two issues, two blanks. What's the knowledge? How do you gain it? And how do you use it to unlock new areas? The first one is solved by placing nodes around the world, and Lena is going to talk about that.
In this game, you started with just being thrown in there completely oblivious about what you're supposed to do and what has happened. So at the core of it, it's the story, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Story was difficult to make. We're CS students, and it turns out writing is hard. We were aiming for something that was sort of your part of an adventurous Greek legend. And as with all legends, there's a moral of the story that you're supposed to discover along the way. And our process of writing the story looked a lot like just throwing paint on a wall, and until someone goes, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And of course, also part of the storytelling is the actual telling itself. So we needed to craft ways of giving information to the player without it being just sort of boring. And one of it is the world itself that is changing, and you need to discover why is it even changing, and what has that got to do with the goal of the game. And we were dealing with a lot of challenges, but one big one was the fact that you, as the player, are a very big unknown. Sort of a bit of a pain, because we don't know what you will do. So we needed to do a lot of crafting of where we place nodes, what they contain, whether you go there in the exact way you're supposed to be going, but feel like you're exploring.
Okay, let's go back to our gameplay loop. We have the first one. Now the second one. We actually placed 3 abilities in the world that the player can retrieve. The first one is a destroy ability. You have a big rock in front of you, you can just destroy it, it clears the path, and you unlock a new area. The second one is a dash. You can jump over big gaps and unlock a new area. Finally, you have the vision ability that reveals hidden things in the darkness and reveals hidden areas that you weren't aware of. Again, these abilities are not available at the beginning, and you have to solve puzzles to retrieve them. That brings us to another question. What makes a good puzzle? How to design puzzles? Well, we decided to go back to our inspiration and use the environment. You see here, there are 2 nodes that slightly differ from the path, which might hint that there might be something hidden behind those trees. We also scatter clues to help the player solve the puzzles because they were quite challenging. And finally, last but not least, playtest and refine. This is really important because that way we realized that a lot of our puzzles that we designed were too difficult to solve. That's basically it for the gameplay. Now, let's jump to our amazing graphics.
Okay, so basically the amazing graphics in questions are the technical achievement of the game. Since it's a 3D game, we wanted to make it look good, however, even if it's a lot of work. Usually the way to make a 3D game look good is to make it realistic with a lot of details and some complex textures. But we didn't have time to do it in 2 months. Plus, we don't have any artistic talents, especially in this team. So we opted out for the complete opposite and make it make the look of the game completely flat without any detail, but still make it look good. So we use the tooth shading, which flattens the lighting of the game and make it look more cartoonish. However, the basic way to do it creates some weird artifacts with the lights when there are multiples of them in the same place. So we came up and handcrafted our own version of toon shading in order to make it look unique and still appealing. Also, to make the game more interesting, we added additional graphics features so that make you able to walk through fog, look at the sky or the water. Some of those features are actually useful for the puzzle. And the outline, we also added outlines to polish the look of the game.
So I'm really proud of the atmosphere that we created in the game, and I wanted to conclude on the music that we created ourselves that happens to play at the beginning of the game. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that you will like playing our game.
Perfect. Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. We're moving on now to the last team in the House of Meridian. This is Meridian Team 5, Olympus Will Brawl. Let's look at their trailer.
Hello everyone, we are team number 5 from the House of Meridian, and our game is called Olympus Will Brawl. When we first heard about the theme of this year's game lab, the gods, and especially the Greek gods, we immediately decided that we want to make them fight. So our goal for this course was to create a proper fighting game with Greek gods, with deep combat mechanics. And to spice it up, we decided to code all physics, all UI, and all of these things on our own, and surprisingly it works. It has been quite a journey, and on the left you can see the physical prototype, on the right the final release. Both show the game menu and character selection screen, map selection screen, mode selection screen. There is one more comparison slide, which shows the game arena. On the left, these cute small gods are fighting with sticks, of course, and on the right there is the final release, where gods can actually fight without sticks. The objective, the goal of the game is quite simple. You need to knock your opponent out of the screen. The more you damage the opponents, the easier it becomes to knock them out. And you can see Zeus knocking out Poseidon and scoring a kill. There are several modes in the game. You can play either with 2 people or 4 people, and you can choose your rules. Either both teams get 3 lives, or you have a timer and you need to score the most knockouts. Now let's talk a bit about the combat system. As in every fighting game, the combat system is a bit complicated, but in general, it boils down to several things. The first is there are close and long range attacks. Attacks can be launched either in air or on the ground. They further split into neutrals, up, down, sides, a proper fighting game. And each god has a special ability or special force. Of course, they can also defend with dodges or quick rounds that are called dashes. Diving a bit more into the combat mechanics, there are many parameters that can be tuned for every god, for every sub-attack of every god. And this gave us infinite opportunities to make our gods stand out, to make them unique. And at the same time, it gave us infinite headaches when we tried to balance them, and especially create animations for every single thing. Enough with combat, let's meet our gods. The first one is Zeus. Zeus is a close-range fighter. He's heavy, he's a bit slow, he can't jump high, but he deals lots of damage, especially with his special thunderstorm attack. The next one is Aphrodite. She's, as we call her, enchanting sniper. Enchanting because she can freeze her enemies with a powerful spell of love. And Sniper, because she's actually a killer. So she has the best projectiles in the game. But to compensate, she's a bit weak in close-range combat, and she has low health. Athena, on the opposite, is the coolest defensive character in the game. She has the best defense. She's the only character that can defend and attack at the same time. And she is very heavy, so it's hard to knock her back and knock her out. And the last cute guy is Poseidon. Poseidon is the aquatic speedster. He's the fastest, the most dexterous, the most agile character in the game. He recovers the fastest from attacks, and he has a special water projectile. This projectile grows in size, can hit multiple opponents, and recharges very fast. To make it more interesting, we take these gods and put them into different environments, multiple environments. The first one is Olympus. It has a platform with slidable walls that enable more combat variety. And in this clip, you can see Zeus saving himself from death by climbing the wall and just recovering back onto the platform. The other two maps are Phonos and Atlantis. They both use the same concept of angled surfaces. And these are nice because they change the combat. So you can't just shoot straight because you will likely not hit anyone. And you need to adjust your position to hit in close-range combat as well. And the Atlantis map has this angled platform, but it also rotates. So you need to adjust your position all the time. And this combination of variety in combat and variety in environments creates a nice package of replayability and competitive feel. And with that, that's the end of our presentation. Thanks a lot for your attention.
So thank you again. These were the 5 games from the House of Meridian. All of these games, as well as the ones that are coming up, will be available to play in the reception that's immediately following the presentations. So if you are excited to play them, you'll have a chance very soon. And don't forget, we're going to ask you soon to vote for your favorite game, so keep that in mind while you watch the presentations. We can move on to the House of Rapture. And I'd like to invite Rapture Team 1 to come on stage. Let's take a look at their game trailer. Oh, here we go.
My faithful warriors, a great peril has befallen us. My mighty Gungnir, my weapon of power, has been stolen. A treacherous theft orchestrated by the decisive Loki. But fear not, my valiant fighters. I summon you to embark a daring mission to retrieve Gungnir from Loki's pitch-black caverns. Against all odds and monstrous creatures, you will be guided by the divine might of Odin himself. I will bestow each of you a power to illuminate even the darkest voids. By the wings of my ravens, let the thunder of your valor echo across the realms as we forge our destiny with the fury of the Allfather. Charge, my warriors, for in your hands lies the fate of Asgard, and through your courage you shall reclaim what is rightfully mine.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our presentation about our game Hellier, Fear the Dark. So to start off, our main motivation for this course was to create a fun and engaging multiplayer game where the players have to kind of like collaborate together to get to the goal of the game. So in the best case, it will look something like this while the players are playing our game. After some brainstorming, we came up with the idea that the players are in a dark cave, they don't have a lot of lighting, and they have to kind of like play together to defeat the enemies. We had a look at a lot of like different kind of like game arts, concept arts, like this image here. You can see 2 warriors fighting in or standing in a dark cave. One of them has like a torch with them, and this brings me to the core game mechanic.
So with the multiplayer aspect of our game in mind and also the darkness of the cave system, we were motivated to create some light abilities the players can use and wanted them to use them as often as possible. For this, we then reduce the vision of the players at the minimum, and such that they are focused and are forced to use the lightning abilities. Also, we wanted to motivate the players to stay together and to combat the enemies as a group, and therefore also use the lightning spells to explore the cave system even further and stay together as a group. At the beginning of our project, we started with short drawings of our lightning abilities and also discuss on how we want to implement them into our game. Later on, we produced a prototype with paper and plastic to see how the lightning abilities will affect the gameplay of the players, and also on how they will work together and how the players can work together to explore the cave even further. So finally, our game, as you have seen in the trailer, will look like this, and the players have to use their abilities to enlarge their vision. And also the lightning abilities will be designed in such a way that they help in the combat against the enemies and dealing damage to them.
So in our game, the players take control of these Viking warriors. You can see several animations here of the warrior performing different actions. So we have some basic abilities. We have the normal functionalities like walking and standing still, and big focus is on our special ability. Each character can only have one of those. Next up, we have our enemies. These are enemies that have a melee attack. So what they do is they chase after the different players. At the very first, at the start of our development, you can see we had this very rudimentary spider as a placeholder. Later on, this developed to the nicer animations of the skeleton you can see on the right. So these are the basic abilities of the Viking warrior. To the very left, you can see the ranged attack. It's a bow and arrow attack that each player can perform. In the middle, you can see the torch. Each warrior is capable of placing a torch. This torch stays up for a little time and gives the player light to play around. And on the very right, you can see the melee attack. This is a next swing that has very short range, but does a lot of damage to enemies close by.
The players can also choose between special abilities in the beginning. We have decided on 4 special abilities, and these also have a time range so that players can't reuse them every time. So first we have the campfire. This campfire has the ability to restore the player's health. So if your friend or the player is kind of like on the verge of dying, you can actually revive him and give him more time to play the game. Also, we have the fireball. It kind of shoots in the direction you want, and once it hits the wall, it enlightens the wall and leaves a mark, which also allows you to explore the cave. Then we have the firewall. This is kind of a protection against the enemies, so the enemies can't actually go over this firewall, and you're safe behind this firewall, so you can plan and strategize what your next steps are. And the fourth and last special ability is the lightning ability, which in my opinion is the coolest one. So you can see the lightning bouncing off the walls, so kind of you can use them to actually explore the cave and to see actually where you have to walk and where the enemies are or where the artifacts are. So if you like our game, please vote for us, and also you're welcome to play our game in the Food Lab afterwards. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. Moving right along, we're going to go to Rapture team number 2 called Hammered. Here's our trailer.
I can't find my hammer. I think I forgot it on the boat last night. Would you bring it back? Don't worry, it's really not that heavy.
Right, everyone, hello. We are the team behind Hammered. The main idea behind our game is to smash through puzzles with a flying hammer. We'll see more of that in the gameplay video.
You wake up on a deserted island as you partied last night with Thor and his friends. Your head is pounding. Maybe you had 1 too many drinks. Suddenly you realize that Thor's hammer is with you, and that sets you on the long journey of bringing it back. You might have noticed that we have various character animations. These were all generated using Mixamo and integrated in our game using an external library.
All the assets you can see on screen right now were custom built for our game. Our goal was to make a sort of welcoming and fun vibe, and this was achieved using a low poly aesthetic and a sort of bright and vibrant color palette, as you can see in the leaves of the trees and the grass textures. All of the mechanics in our game are based around the use of a hammer to interact with the environment. For example, using this pressure plate to open the door. You can also knock over other environmental objects to create new paths or block obstacles in your way, as you can see right here with this tree and the laser.
We have just mentioned lasers. They are an important part of our 3D forward rendering pipeline that we built from scratch. It supports lasers that glow, it supports grass that are instanced and can render thousands at once. We also support shadows below every object in the scene and particles that you will see just in a second behind the hammer.
In order to add to this immersive world, we decided to engineer the entire soundscape ourselves. So this includes all of the background music that you're hearing that varies between islands and the sound effects, the latter of which we decided to make 3D spatial audio in order for the players to have a better idea where the obstacles lie and immerse themselves in this world.
So now on the slide, you can see 2 snapshots which capture the evolution of the technical achievement of our game, which is the hammer trajectory. So on your left, what you see is what we had initially implemented, which was nothing more than just the hammer just magically warping back to the character. And by the later and ending stages of the game, which is what you see on your right, is the hammer reaching the character while avoiding obstacles. So the path routing itself is done using the A-star algorithm, and the smooth curves are done using consecutive quadratic Bezier curves.
For the puzzle design, we chose to go more modular routes, building smaller little units that were sort of more intricate that we can then merge together into these larger, more complex islands. We then integrated these puzzles into our game using a custom level editor that we built in Monogame. As I mentioned before, all of the assets were built inside of Blender following a sort of low poly aesthetic inspired by games such as Tunic and Short Hike.
Even though we used an external library to integrate all our character animations, this task was far from easy, and we encountered a lot of weird and crazy bugs, and some of them still haunt us at night.
But in order to add to the whimsical feel, we, as mentioned earlier, decided to compose all of the music ourselves, and so this was done in Logic, using a variety of major and pentatonic scales in order to add a bright, twinkly sound to all of the levels.
To allow for all of the interactions within the game between the hammer and the environment, we wanted to have some physics in the game. We started with some naive bounding box collision handling, but then eventually transitioned to integrating an external physics engine into Monogame. This came with a huge learning curve, and we ended up with having to handle a lot of bugs, such as the ones on the screen with a rock just going off into infinity, the players sliding around, and trees that just did not want to fall.
I'll showcase some of the progress we made in the map designs along the way. We started off with a very flat, saturated, and cheap look. We didn't have any shadows at all. So we wanted some organic feel and more textured vibe. So we went for a realistic approach. Unfortunately, this felt very claustrophobic with the tall mountains. We had a lot of issues with the physics, being able to climb slopes, and there were a lot of issues with hammer trajectory planning as well. So then we finally settled on the voxel-based approach that respects both the first designs and the second designs, and even furthermore allows us to expand into territories like hardware-instanced objects like grass, nice lasers, and all of that without losing any performance at all, 60 FPS. Nice.
We're a team of individuals coming from various different backgrounds with one goal of creating a fun game. Throughout the process of this entire project, we learned and honed a lot of new skills.
So if you want to come see the fruit of a semester-long sort of journey by a bunch of passionate people, come try our game at the Apéro. And for those watching at home, you can play it already right now on itch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on, next we have Rapture Team 3. Let's see their trailer.
It's the end of time. The gods face Ragnarok. Hope is fading. With no other choice, they turn to mortals for aid. Ascend the mighty tree of Yggdrasil, and claim the mantle of Asgard's champion for yourself. Rise, unleash your power, and shape destiny.
All right, hi everyone. I am really excited to talk to you about our game, Yggdrasil Ascension. Before I do so, I would actually start with introducing the team that has worked on this for the past 3 months. So from right to left, we have the confusing Professor Dumeni, we have the fast ninja Tillman, we have Patrick the strong mailman, we have David, our inconspicuous ghost, and lastly, there's me, the nerdy scientist. So diving right into the game, as all the other groups, we started with numerous hours of brainstorming. There was 2 major components that we had to figure out. On one hand side, what part of Northern mythology were we inspired by and that we want to use in our game? And then second of all, what game should it be? Should it be a fighting game, party game, etc.? And in the end, we settled on a co-op bullet hell game where the goal would be to reach the top of Yggdrasil. And Yggdrasil is kind of this big world tree in Norse mythology. For the technical component, we settled on the fact that we wanted that each playthrough would be unique. So our goal was to have a randomly generated level, and that one being in the form of set tree. On the right-hand side, you can see some concept art. You can see a screenshot of the game art rail that we were inspired by. It's top-down 2D, also bullet hell game. And you can see a first concept drawing that we've had at the very early stage on our game. With that in mind, we were all very eager to start developing, and the very first step to get to the end of it was to do a physical prototype. That went sort of well. A bullet hell game doesn't really translate well into a physical game, but it did give the opportunity to talk about character abilities and how they could interact with each other. Then, for our first digital prototype, we could actually start programming, get to know the framework behind everything. We had first some very simple sprites that we could move around. We could move around the camera, but it was all very rudimentary. And then for the next step, we actually wanted to make it feel like a game. So we added enemies. Enemies would shoot you. You had to shoot enemies to kill them. We had different rooms that were connected to each other with connectors that you could open and close. We would have some bugs that we had to then find and hopefully all eliminate. But in total, all of this worked really well for us. We used a level editor to really streamline the process, and it made it very easy, or a lot easier, later down the line.
And so, continuing into our development cycle, we actually got to our first playable version with our alpha release. We added a lot better AI, a much better boss, and an actually beatable level, which was a very positive, I think. We got then really excited to go into the playtesting phase, where we really went hard. We asked a lot of friends to come over and play our game, give us feedback. We brought it to barbecues, etc. Really a bit too over the top, but we did it. And we got a lot of really valuable feedback out of that, which let us include a lot of new features for the jury release. So our jury release had a much better tutorial, much more enemies, had a much better boss in general, but most importantly had our final iteration on our level generation. Being a core part of our game, we really wanted it to work very well, and so our initial sketches had this idea of you climbing this big Yggdrasil tree in northern mythology, and so we wanted to build the level in such a way that it reflected that tree. And so our first few iterations, we tried to play around with making the rooms in the shape of the tree, but figured out at some point that it didn't really work that well, so we ended up pivoting the other way to make the room fit inside of the tree that we had. And so we ended up in this final configuration with layouts that randomly generate and randomly choose rooms that then get placed in correct positions and generate corridors. And so, for our final build, which we're really happy about, we have a few final features which we were really very excited about. Mostly, we have more guns, pretty important in this type of game. We have 9 guns in total, 4 starter guns, 4 upgrade guns, which you can pick up during playtime, and finally, a special gun that you can only find if you actually come upstairs to play with us. And finally, we also have 5 special abilities which help you play around with the game, 4 for each character and 1 for the ghosts. And so with all this done, we added the last bit of important detail, which is the juiciness of our game. We added effects, particles, and screen shaking, and a lot of music, which made our whole game now feel so much better. And so I now leave you with a quick preview of our game, and I hope you come upstairs after the show to play it. Thank you very much.
Great. So moving on, our next game is from Rapture Team 4 called Hammer Time. Take it away.
All right, hi everyone. We are the developers of Hammer Time. Previously Hammered, but we had some copyright issues with another team. So the story goes as such. Skrimir, the biggest and baddest of all frost giants, is sick and tired of Thor's countless attempts at his life and has decided to play a little trick on him. He has stolen Thor's hammer on the cover of the night and, as a master of illusions, created countless copies of it. He handed out the copies to the strongest humans he could find, giving one of them the real one. Thor, kind-hearted god that he is, doesn't want to fight the humans, so he comes up with the next best alternative. He'll make the humans fight each other. Seeing as there's no way a mere illusion could stand up to the original, he believes that the last person standing must have Thor's beloved Mjolnir. So, with the promise of entry into Valhalla, the stage is set and the warriors are off to battle. So, we met about roughly 3 months ago and decided to form a team because we all wanted roughly the same thing. A game where players could fight off against each other, that would be fun at parties, would be chaotic, hilarious. Imagine lots of people sitting on a couch trying to push each other off, screaming at the screen, possibly throwing controllers at each other. So we started off with a rough design sketch. It already displays most of the game pretty well. You can see players are standing on an island of tiles. The tiles are shaded to indicate that they're breaking. The more often you walk across a tile, the more broken it becomes, and eventually it breaks. So the island shrinks. The goal is to be the last one standing on the island and to knock the other players off by throwing hammers at each other. There are walls, there are items, but this was what it initially looked like. To figure out if this would actually be a good idea, we created a little physical prototype. It looks like this. We had some funny-looking chess pieces, a very flimsy sheet of A4 paper as an island, and even flimsier playing cards. It took a couple iterations of figuring out with which rules to play, but eventually we ended up with an actual pretty fun game, even on a flimsy sheet of paper. So we figured we'd continue with this and turn into a proper software prototype. And this was 2 weeks later. We have cubes, shooting cubes, standing on cubes. The island, not quite a cube, but we could have turned it into a cube as well. Would have fit the theme. And this was actually already a lot more fun to play. It was a proper game, even if it consisted of cubes. On our way to the final product, we had a couple bumps in the road with players standing on air and falling through the ground. You know the drill. But as you can see, it already started to look a lot better. And eventually, we ended up with something that already looked pretty cool. We created more maps. We made everything very pretty and shiny. You have good-looking characters, good-looking hammers. You can't see it on this picture. Good-looking background clouds. We also added menus, but you can't see it on this one. To show a little video of what the game looked like in the end, there we go. You can see the tiles start breaking after a while. There's hammers flying everywhere. You're not quite sure which player character you are because there's just so much stuff happening. The island starts shrinking after a while. Here you see two players trying to figure out how far their hammer can fly. You can see that they're dashing around, trying to get an advantage, trying to get into a better position. And all in all, I think we got what we wanted. Pure chaos and lots of fun. We already played this a couple times and it is hilarious. If you want to try it out yourself, we'll be upstairs afterwards, and you can also download the game. We made it available for free. Just look at the QR code. We'll also have it upstairs. And yeah, thank you for listening, and see you upstairs.
Wonderful. Okay, now it's time for Rapture Team 5. Let that sink.
to be able to reach that.
So, hello. The game that we have the honor of presenting to you today and that we have made is Let That Sink. Yes, it is a pun. So our original idea was a naval tower defense game with a Viking setting because after all, we were assigned to the Norse Gods. And so we use combat with proper weapons that would have been used at around that period. And rather than using money to buy weapons, we just use the resources themselves to build them. And an interesting twist is that you take extra resources after battle home for permanent upgrades. And some early concept art can also be seen on this slide, as well as the structure of the weapon upgrade tree. So you may be familiar with Flash games. One of these Flash games is Bloons Terror Defense 5. Many of you have probably played it. And it also served as our inspiration, as in many ways it is quite similar, just with a Norse setting for it. The graphics, which are also loosely inspired by Bloons Terror Defense 5, are a sort of cartoony style with relatively little color depth, as you can see by the palette. Most of these colors are actually in the palette that were used in the game. And the font that we used in the game is actually the one you see in this presentation as well. It's the copperplate font.
When it comes to music, we designed everything ourselves. Also all the sounds, we took rather traditional approach, so we basically wrote the music, we orchestrated it, we recorded it, we mixed it. For the music part, we used the sampled instruments, and for the sounds, we recorded and processed them ourselves.
So the game changed a lot visually, but not content-wise, because in the first 2 weeks we mostly had all the core mechanics implemented. But with the visuals we had lots of problems, and especially with the ships, because we didn't want to create or use copyrighted ships, so we create them by hand, and they are modular, so we can combine them how we want, even put weapons on them, which is also another core mechanic of the game, that the ships can fight back. Then in the last 2 weeks we also wanted to add some more juiciness to the game, so with animations and details like particle systems for the breaking ships and explosions with shockwaves. On the contrary, the skill tree had to be set back a little bit, and it was reduced to just using it for unlocking new weapons and not really like the buffs and adding new features and mechanics that we intended in the beginning.
And balancing has always been the biggest challenge of our game. So consider this network with weapons, enemies, and resources, where weapons are used to destroy enemies, and then enemies drop resources, and then resources are then used to build new weapons. So initially, when we started with only one weapon, one enemy, and one resource, the network was very simple. But after adding more weapons, more resources, and more enemies, as you can see, the network becomes much more complicated. In addition, we also need to take into account different levels and map, and which makes the balancing task even more difficult. Nonetheless, after hundreds of rounds of playtesting, we managed to make the game reasonably balanced. So, thank you for your attention, and please do come and play our game, because we as the developers can show you how to cheat. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. We're moving on to our last house. This is the house of Winterhold. Their theme was Egyptian gods. We have 3 more teams left. Looking forward to them. We're going to start with Winterhold Team 1, the Tomb of Anubis.
Hello everyone, we are very happy to present to you our game Tomb of Anubis. Tomb of Anubis is a strategic collaborative maze game designed for up to 4 players. It was pretty clear to us from the beginning that we wanted our game to be collaborative. But not only collaborative, we also wanted to have a balanced gameplay in the sense that no one player alone can win the game. Our design philosophy was to make the players communicate with each other, but also come up with winning strategies. Once we got the theme Gods of Egypt, we all instantly thought of labyrinths. And we wanted to add this element to our game so that the player can have more disorientation. In the prototyping phase, you can see our ideas coming to life. We prepared a cardboard model of the labyrinth consisting of multiple rooms and corridors. Here we want to effectively demonstrate certain gameplay situations. We used 2 pieces to mimic the in-game characters and also 3D printed a version of Anubis. The playtesting session with the cardboard prototype confirmed to us that communication and strategy make up the core part of the game. Allow me now to introduce to you the background story of our game. Recently, a new entrance to the Great Pyramid of Giza was uncovered. As a group of explorers, you made your way into the pyramid and found a treasure. However, upon opening the treasure, you unleashed the wrath of Anubis, who was guarding the graves. He's out now to get you, and it is up to you and your team to find a way to lock Anubis back in his tomb again. So the objective of this game is for every player to find its artifact that is scattered across the labyrinth. Thereby, they must avoid coming too close to Anubis, which might otherwise lead to a deathly encounter. After collecting the artifacts, the player then has to place it on the altar and from where the Anubis initially spawned out of. The game is over once all the artifacts are collected and brought back successfully to the altar. There are power-ups available which grant the explorer temporary abilities which can be utilized to flee from Anubis. Basic strategies involve navigating through the labyrinth and uncovering corridors and rooms along the way. But more importantly, communication is key in order to win the game, whether it be about the player's artifact or the location of Anubis. To guarantee strategical exploration of the labyrinth, each time we require freshly generated labyrinths every round. So to tackle this problem, we implemented an algorithm that procedurally generates a labyrinth given a few set of rules. Such rules are maximizing the distance between the altar and the artifacts. All rooms in the labyrinth should be reachable. Some of the artifacts are placed behind traps that require 2 or more players to deactivate it. Several exits from the spawning area which allow players to escape in different directions. Here are a few examples of the labyrinths that are generated by our algorithm. So you can see they're completely different but still have the same design. Additionally, Anubis uses a graph abstraction of the labyrinth in order to move within the bounds of the map and also chase the players once they get too close. Finally, visual assets contributed a lot to the overall vibe of our game. We opted for hand-drawn cartoony style assets as opposed to pixel art because we liked it more. However, the power-up icons are deliberately designed in pixel art so that they distinguish from non-interactive game assets. Now, having talked a lot about the game now, let's finally jump to the long-awaited gameplay trailer of Tomb of Anubis.
This is what you see when you start the game. In the middle of the screen, there's a minimap, and the player are not just free to roam the maze and find different things. On the top right, you can see that the player is now finding an artifact. However, he can't pick it up because it's of the wrong color. He can, however, tell the other players that the blue artifact is there. On the top left, you can see that the player is now being chased by Anubis. Now the question is, can he escape him? He's catching up to him. Okay, he didn't quite make it, and he's now a ghost, and he can still move around, but he can't interact with anything. To be revived, another player has to come by and help him. These buttons that the players can press are used to disable spike traps, which block off paths to different things. For example, on the top left here, you can see the player is now able to pick up his artifact and place it on the altar. And the music change you just heard signifies that Anubis is now angry. That means that he has some more tools up his sleeves. However, to find out what these tools are and also which power-ups you can use to defend yourself against Anubis, you will have to come to play the game yourself after the presentation. Thanks, and we hope to see you there.
Great. Up next is Winterhold Team 2. This is Hip Hip Horus.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the presentation of Hip Hip Horus. So, our storyline is based on the battle for the kingdom of Egypt between the gods Horus and Seth. So, they did a lot of challenges against each other, including a stone boat race. However, during this race, Horus cheated by using a painted wooden boat. So, Seth got very furious and transformed into his alter ego, an angry hippo, to chase Horus. So now Horus must escape Seth by navigating his boat through the maze.
And that's where our core concept was born, an angry hippo maze chase. We wanted to make a game that was intuitive, accessible to a whole range of gamers, and most importantly, just a fun game. So we decided on a single-player 2D puzzle. Because we chose a simple game mechanism, we wanted to add a couple of features that set us apart from the average 2D maze game. First, our hippos are intelligent. They can keep track of and chase the player. This adds the thrill of being chased to the player's experience.
Not just that, but our hippos also have the ability to intelligently choose when to break through land in order to chase the player. So that means our mazes are dynamic, and this adds a layer of unpredictability to our game. Finally, we designed a boss hippo. So we won't give away too much, but he adds a certain madness to the later levels of our game. So come try it out later to find out how.
Here you see a bit about our design journey. So first you can see our paper prototype, that's how we started off, and then our first digital prototype, and from there to our final game. So yeah, as you can see, the game functionality itself hasn't changed too much. The basic idea is the same. You have to collect the keys, open the maze door, avoid the hippos, and escape the maze. But kind of keeping a simple game mechanic allowed us to focus a lot on these additional features that make our game different and unique. And it also gave us a lot of time to debate and discuss asset iterations. So for example, this is the journey of our boat. We started off with a highly symbolic kind of complex structure that wasn't really obvious to everybody. And we realized that we would rather keep it simple as possible, and make sure that our assets are recognizable. The same goes for our hippo. Here we had a lot of trouble with deciding the perspective of our hippo. So given that our maze is top down, we were debating, should we have a side view or a top view? And then we realized if we just remove the body and keep the head, it makes things a lot easier. So we decided to go with the hippo head and have some simple variations to represent different enemy behaviors. And a quick note to say that all of our assets and UI and animations are hand-drawn. So that also adds this cartoony, painted, stop-motion-y feel to our game, which you can experience when you try it out later. And we had a lot of fun with playtesting, so we discovered a lot of bugs. We got insights on our visuals, on how difficult our game is to play. But the biggest takeaway was really that our game needs context. So without context, our hippos were cows, and our boats were noodle soup bowls. So we did spend a lot of time adding a story page that you saw earlier and updating our assets so that they were recognizable.
So now I will talk a bit about the technical challenges that we faced. The most important of them being the Hippo AI itself, which was also one of our technical achievements. In terms of implementation, the hippos can essentially be in 5 states, such as chase, land braking, or even a stun state. And we needed to make sure that the hippo is able to transition properly between different states in a particular way without breaking, and we had a lot of bugs with that. So handling these state transitions was one of the main challenges. And the second main challenge was with the balancing. There were a lot of hyperparameters, so to say, for the hippos, such as the chase distance or the probability of breaking land, their speed, and so on. So we had to spend some time tuning the different parameters. And now we have a short clip to demonstrate the gameplay. As you can see, now I'm trying to move the boat and collect the key. Now the hippo starts chasing us. So you kind of have to wait for it to move away and then forge your way through. And you can kind of trick it by going around these land blocks which are created. Yeah, now they try to chase you and you finally reach the exit. So that was our game. We encourage you to come and play it with us. And now we leave you with this hippo joke. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, well, this brings us to the end. We have one more game to show you. This is Winterhold Team 3. And come on down. Let's take a look at your trailer.
The story of Benu Benu started with a simple idea. What if we took the tower defense genre, but instead of the players placing towers, the players are the towers? Since we are in the Egyptian house, we came up with the concept of a magical Egyptian bird called a Benu, sitting at the top of an obelisk and shooting down powerful spells at his enemies. We also wanted to capture the fantasy of a powerful dragon flying over enemy armies and raining down fire on them. This means that we wanted the Bennu birds to be able to fly from obelisk to obelisk. From the start, we knew that we wanted to create something fast, fun, and cooperative, a couch co-op game that you can enjoy together with your friends. With this in mind, we set ourselves 4 design goals. We wanted to create something unique, not just a copy or alternate version of an existing game. We wanted the game to be fast-paced, but also strategic and cooperative. And finally, we wanted to make sure that the game is highly replayable. It's hard to come up with a category for the game, but you could roughly call it a cooperative roguelike wave defense game. The goal is to protect the pyramid in the middle of the map from waves of enemies that come in large numbers in different patterns and approach from all sides. You are not alone, however, as Bennu Bennu can be played with up to 4 players. Whenever a wave of enemies is defeated, each player gets to choose from a huge variety of upgrades to increase his power. We're especially proud of the fact that 100% of the sounds in Bennu Bennu are original. Every soundtrack and sound effect has been produced by our sound engineer. A fun fact here is that many of the sounds in the game are actually a recording of my cats, made to sound more like birds, such as the turnaround ability.
One of our main design goals was that the game should be fast and interactive. So every player should always have something to do during the game. Each bird has a base attack that it can move around and that damages enemies it hits. Additionally, players can upgrade their birds by picking multiple different abilities. For example here, the power surge ability increases the size and damage of the base attack for a short duration. Or the plasma orb ability can be used to shoot the projectile at enemies that are further away. Another example is the shock ability that sends lightning to an enemy and also chains to other nearby enemies. So players can really pick different abilities and therefore customize the way they play the game. Here the red bird has a dash ability to move between obelisks faster. He has the plasma orb ability, and he also has a passive that creates an explosion whenever he arrives at an obelisk. Another goal was that the game should be strategic and cooperative. One way to reward cooperation is the bird collision. Whenever 2 birds collide, they create a big explosion that damages all enemies. So here we can see that the players really have to work together to defeat a big wave of enemies. We also added abilities that interact between multiple birds. Here the lightning connection shoots lightning from one bird to another and damages all enemies between them. We also added colored enemies that take reduced damage from a bird with the same color. So here the green bird can't really deal with the green enemies and has to ask the blue player for help. But since birds cannot pass each other, the blue bird has to take the long way around. So here you can see that the team really has to plan and cooperate together if they want to move to another position. Otherwise, birds could block each other's movement. And this also creates some really fun and hectic situations during gameplay.
To make rounds unique, we already implemented many abilities and enemy behaviors. But on top of that, we wanted to offer the players new and unique maps for every game they would play. These maps are randomly generated by our custom algorithm, which is one of our technical achievements. It uses many parameters and constraints in order to generate maps that are not only random, but also fun, playable, and interesting. Here you can see some examples like the angles between ley lines or the distance between obelisks. This forces the players to adapt to the new layouts instead of just using the same strategy over and over. Some maps may favor speedy Bennus patrolling all over the map, whereas a more static and powerful build could be the solution to your next game.
Finally, we are going to look at some gameplay. First, look at the pyramid in the center, where green and blue explosions kill all the enemies around. Those are activated player abilities. But the enemies are swarming in quickly again. Do you think our players can still win? As you can see, the enemies are too overwhelming, and our players have lost. This wave is called the party wave and is very hard to beat. You can come our to our booth and are very welcome to try to beat it yourself. We will continue working on our game and want to publish it on Steam. We've already set up the page, and it would be amazing if you could wishlist it. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you liked Beno Beno.
So that was the last game we're showing tonight. Let's give a big round of applause to all of the teams. Wonderful job. So we are shortly giving an audience award. So this is your chance to vote for your favorite team. So please scan the QR code here or visit this URL, and you can vote and really let us know which you enjoyed the most. Now, to remind you about the games, I'm going to show a short segment from each one just so that you can remember. Here it is. Good. So, have you all decided? I see a few people are still voting. We can watch the trailers one more time, and then we're going to close the votes. So this is your last chance. Here you go. Wonderful. So thank you, everyone, for voting. We're going to close the voting now. We're going to tally the results, and we'll let you know momentarily. While we do that, I want to move on to our jury award winner. We're very fortunate and very lucky to have the kind support of a game studio located in the south of England called Studio Gobo. They're a AAA studio. They've worked on some amazing titles, most recently Hogwarts Legacy, blockbuster hit. And Nick Grover is the QA lead at Studio Gobo. He organized a playtest at the studio where each game was distributed to at least 3 different studio members who tested it, gave feedback to each of the teams, and also evaluated the games and rated them, and will ultimately give the jury award. These are some photos from that playtesting session in their studio. I was actually there last week while they were playing for some other meetings, and it was really interesting to kind of have a meeting and see in the background the games from the students here being played. Very special experience. Nick is joining us remotely, and I will essentially hand over to him now to tell us a little bit about the results from their playtest session and then give the jury award. Nick, please take it away.
Hi there. Thanks, Bob, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to the final presentations for this year's Game Lab. This has been an annual thing for me for the last few years now, and it's always great to hear about how you all approach your ideas and turn them into realities. You've truly had to work as mini development teams and face some of the same sort of challenges that we do here in the studio. And as you're potentially about to embark on your own careers, this experience will be invaluable for you. So to give you a quick bit of background about who we are at Studio Gobo, Bob's done a bit of that already. We're a game studio here on the south coast of England. There's about 120 of us here now, a mix of people ranging from recent graduates starting out in their careers, much like you soon will be, to those that have worked in the industry for 20 plus years and helped make dozens of games. Traditionally, we're a co-dev studio, which means we get to work on features and content for a wide range of games from a variety of different publishers and studios, from Disney Infinity and For Honor to, as Bob mentioned recently, Hogwarts Legacy, and some as yet unreleased or unannounced titles. As I mentioned, the relationship between Gobo and Game Lab goes back a good few years now, and every year we're always impressed with the quality of the work produced by the students on this course, and this year is no exception. In order to put together the feedback for you all, I got about 20 volunteers here at the studio, each of whom looked at 2 of the games. As Bob mentioned, he was here to see some of that taking place last week when we had some multiplayer sessions going for some of the games. It was great to meet him in the real world for the first time, having spoken to him through this for the last few years. So within those 20 people, we had people from just about every discipline. We had artists, designers, engineers, producers, dev testers. Each game then had at least 3 different people from 3 different disciplines look at it. And those people then all put together their thoughts on what they liked about the games and where they thought the games might benefit from some future development. At the end of the day, this is the same process we go through when reviewing content that we're working on here at the studio. You're never going to make the best game you can if you don't seek out other people's opinions. I'd encourage you to always try to get as many eyes as possible on what you're working on. It can be a huge driver helping you identify what areas would benefit most from further iteration. So I believe each of the teams should have received the feedback by now that we put together for you. I hope everything is clear and useful. If you haven't got it yet, speak to Bob. He should be able to forward it on to you. But feedback is only part of our job here. We obviously have the honour of choosing the jury prize winner. Since nobody looks at all of the projects except for myself, everyone also scored each game that they play tested. I then take the average score for each of those games, and that reveals our winner. Now that does mean we can end up with a tie, like last year where we ended up with the extremely unusual situation where 4 games all tied for first place. To try and avoid that this year, I tweaked the scoring system a bit and the result's a bit more clear-cut. While the scoring was close, we do have an outright winner. I've been asked to announce the top 3, so we'll go through them in reverse order, and while one game has secured first place, we actually do have a tie for 3rd place. So without further ado, let's get started by announcing that the two games that have come third are Rapture Team 4 Hammer Time and Winterhold Team 1, Team of Anubis. So with Hammer Time, we got pretty competitive playing this one. You've created these tight little arenas that just invite quick fire combat. Having the floor tiles crack and disappear is a great addition as well. As we were looking at it, some of the things, some of the thoughts we had were that some polish on the controls would be great, some acceleration and deceleration on the player movement rather than the current one-to-one mapping. It would make a big difference to how it feels to play. And then other little things like, in the build we played, the dash was more of a teleport. It would be great to see like a proper dash. That would be a nice bit of polish too. But all in all, we had great fun playing this. We had some close fought, real competitive battles. It's the sort of game we can imagine playing with friends at parties. And then with Team of Anubis, we got to play this 4-player, which is great. And one of the things that struck us was it was great how it forced us to communicate. You can't work as a team in this game without constantly feeding information back to each other, which was brilliant. It played really nicely, and we always felt the threat of Anubis every time we went around a corner in the maze. Created a nice level of tension. One of the things we kept running into was we came across quite a few dead ends in the map, which once Anubis has chased you into these certain areas, escape becomes impossible. So it'd be good to maybe find some way to sort of alleviate that a little bit. Also, we liked the idea of maybe slightly clearer UI, so we had a better idea of where we were in terms of our objectives. Like, had we returned, what had we returned to the altar already? What hadn't we? But we'd love to see it with some more progression as well, with some more maps and mechanics introduced as you play through. But we had a lot of fun, and what's already there, really shows the potential of the game. So, moving on to second place. In second, we have Meridian Team 1, Cronus' Curse. We really love the time central mechanic of this game. It's a real thinker. Trying to understand what you need to do during the first half of the available time so that you can do what you need to do during the second half of the time can require a lot of careful thought and planning. You also manage to communicate this mechanic to the player very clearly, very concisely, which isn't necessarily an easy thing to do. It does get fiendishly difficult quite quickly, we thought. So it might be good to smooth out the difficulty curve a bit. You built a lot of levels, so you can afford to ease the player in a bit more. There are a few very simple little quality of life improvements, which would be great to see too. Things like the hourglass map, sometimes they're hidden in the darkness. For us, the fun in the game wasn't having to explore to find where things were hidden, but rather it was solving the puzzles. That was the kind of aspect we preferred. And another thought somebody had here was that adding a ghost of your best previous step might be a nice option as well, so players can see where they need to improve. But at the end of the day, this was a game with a unique mechanic that it used really well. Puzzle games like this can be hugely popular if done well, and we'd definitely like to see more of this. Right, so lastly to our choice for this year's jury prize. So after all the games have been played, all the feedback collated, and all the scores added up, this year we have chosen Meridian Team 3 Prometheus the Heist. Congratulations, Meridian Team 3. We thought you executed your idea really well. Some good old-fashioned stealth gameplay. We thought the implementation of the enemy AI was great. The detection based on line of sight and sound worked well, and level layout, patrol routes all made sense. The pixel art graphics were cute, the music fitted the game well. Having to return carrying the flame was also a nice addition to the game, especially considering any one player couldn't carry it for too long before having to drop it. the game scale well for different numbers of players too, and making the room recipe different each time we played it increased the replayability. We had great fun playing it. I think one thing that sort of occurred to us was, although the different characters have different stats, we'd like to see that exaggerated a bit more in the gameplay. It wasn't quite as obvious as we might have liked it to be, but still. And another thing to think about actually was the camera. Like if the players got separated too far, the camera zoomed right out. It becomes quite tricky to see what you're doing. So there are various ideas you could explore, like potentially using a split screen or something when that happens. But yeah, ultimately we had a lot of fun playing this game and kept restarting it whenever we were caught. Determined to get to the end. We were determined to get to the end. In fact, we completed it once during the play session, but actually it was in single player. I think we ended up finding it a bit easier in single player than we did in multiplayer. So there might be something to look at in the balancing there as well. But look, if your game is making people play again and again and again, then you found something powerful. It's brilliant. And that's it. So congratulations to our winners today, and I think I say this every year, but well done to everyone. We enjoyed all 13 games and saw a lot of potential in them all. You should all be proud of what you've achieved in a remarkably short period of time. So best of luck to all of you from everybody here at Gobo. Thank you.
So thank you, Nick. Let me pass on my personal thanks. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time and effort you put in. Big thanks to everyone at the studio. It's really, really meaningful. Thank you so much for the support. So moving on, I think the next order of business is the Audience Award. I've been told that we have a valid result, and I would like to invite Fabio Zund on stage here to tell us who the winner is.
Thank you, Bob.
Please come, Fabio.
It is an honor and a great pleasure to announce the winners of the 2023 Game Programming Lab Audience Award. That's you. We have the back office handed me these 3 super top secret letters, and they said we have 828 votes. So that's all of you, but many more people at home watching on YouTube. And without further ado, the third rank goes to House Winterhold with 91 votes. Team 3, Benu Benu. Yes, there. Big congratulations. So, making it very suspenseful. Who is excited? I'm very, very excited. On place 2. We have, with 102 votes, House Meridian. Team 5, Olympics will brawl. Woo! And the winner of the 2023 Game Programming Lab Audience Award is, with 186 votes, from House Rapture, Team 3, Yggdrasil Ascension.
So thank you, Fabio, for making those announcements. Thanks again to everyone who voted. This is it for today. I want to say thank you to the team that helped run the Game Lab, to Fabio, to Berga in the back here, violin. Fraser is around. We have a new team member just joined today. So huge thanks to everyone. And the biggest thanks go to all of the students who made all of the games and content. Thank you so much. Join us upstairs for an apéro and a chance to try the games. Round of applause.